Writing. The bouquet left her hands, floated through the air like destiny itself, and landed in the arms of the one woman who had spent years pretending she no longer believed in happy endings. Every guest erupted in cheers, expecting laughter, teasing, and another wedding joke. But instead of smiling for the cameras, my best friend slowly turned, her eyes searching across the crowded ballroom until they found me sitting alone at the forgotten table in the back. Then, without hesitation, she walked straight toward me with tears shining in her eyes, carrying the bouquet as if it wasn't flowers she held, but a promise that had been waiting years to be fulfilled. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us if you believe in kindness and second chances, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable stories that remind us how powerful love and friendship can truly be. Some moments divide a life into two parts. There is the person you were before that moment, and the person you become after it. For me, that moment didn't happen on my wedding day because I never had one. It didn't happen when I received a promotion or bought my first house because those milestones came and went without changing who I really was. My life split into before and after on a spring evening at my best friend's sister's wedding, in a ballroom filled with music, laughter, expensive decorations, and people who believed they knew everyone's story without ever asking the questions that mattered. My name is Daniel, and for nearly 15 years my best friend had been Emily. We met during our first week of college when we both reached for the same book in the campus library. She laughed first, offered me the book, and somehow that tiny act of kindness became the beginning of a friendship that survived exams, heartbreaks, family losses, career failures, and every unexpected twist adulthood threw at us. People constantly assumed we were dating, and every time we denied it, they looked disappointed, almost annoyed that life refused to follow the script they had written in their minds. The truth was far more complicated than romance. Emily had become my safe place during the darkest season of my life. When my father passed away after a long illness, she sat beside me through endless hospital nights. When my mother slowly disappeared into grief, Emily reminded me to keep living. Years later, when she lost her own job during a company downsizing, I spent months helping her rebuild her confidence until she found an opportunity even better than the one she had lost. We became each other's emergency contact, each other's family, and the one person we could always call at 2 in the morning without feeling guilty. Yet life has a strange habit of convincing people that friendship is somehow less meaningful than romance. Every holiday dinner came with questions about when we would finally admit our feelings. Every family gathering included jokes about us growing old together. Eventually the pressure became exhausting. Emily started dating someone named Ryan, while I buried myself in work, convincing myself that loving someone silently was nobler than risking the friendship that meant everything to me. Ryan seemed perfect at first. He was successful, charming, confident, and knew exactly what to say in front of other people. Emily looked happy, and that should have been enough for me. I smiled through every engagement announcement that wasn't ours, every vacation picture they posted together, and every conversation where she described a future that no longer included me as the center of her world. Loving someone sometimes means applauding the choices that quietly break your own heart. Then everything collapsed. Months before their wedding, Ryan admitted he had been seeing someone else. The engagement ended almost overnight. Emily didn't cry in front of anyone except me. She blamed herself for not seeing the signs, questioned her worth, and wondered whether she had simply become too difficult to love. I tried to convince her that betrayal says everything about the person who commits it and nothing about the one who suffers it, but heartbreak rarely listens to logic. It only hears its own echo. Slowly, she recovered. She smiled again, accepted invitations she had once declined, and learned to enjoy life without measuring it against someone else's promises. Watching her heal became one of the greatest privileges of my life, even if I still believed I had missed whatever chance fate might once have offered us. When her younger sister Olivia announced her engagement, everyone worried the celebration would reopen old wounds. Instead, Emily volunteered to help plan almost every detail. She chose flowers, coordinated decorations, comforted stressed relatives, and somehow became the emotional foundation of an event that might once have reminded her only of loss. That quiet resilience amazed me more than words ever could. The wedding itself looked like something from a movie. Soft lights reflected from crystal chandeliers while white roses covered nearly every visible surface. The air smelled of fresh flowers and vanilla cake. Families reunited after years apart, children danced without embarrassment, grandparents smiled at memories nobody else could see, and for a few precious hours it felt as though the world had forgotten every reason to be cruel. I arrived alone, wearing a suit I hadn't worn since my father's funeral. Most guests politely greeted me before returning to conversations about engagements, marriages, children, and futures that seemed designed for everyone except me. I found my assigned seat tucked beside an elderly couple I had never met and quietly accepted that I would simply watch happiness from the sidelines again. Emily looked radiant, not because she wore the most expensive dress in the room but because peace had finally returned to her face. She laughed with her sister, hugged relatives, and danced with her mother. There was still sadness hidden somewhere behind her eyes, but it no longer controlled her. It had become part of her story rather than the whole story. As evening settled in, the master of ceremonies announced the bouquet toss. Every unmarried woman gathered near the dance floor while guests raised their phones, expecting another cheerful tradition. Olivia turned her back, counted dramatically, and threw the bouquet high into the glowing lights. Time seemed to slow. The flowers spun gracefully before dropping directly into Emily's waiting hands. Everyone erupted into applause. Someone shouted that she would surely be the next bride. Emily smiled politely, but something changed inside her expression. Instead of laughing with the crowd, she stared at the bouquet for several long seconds. Then she lifted her head and looked across the ballroom until her eyes met mine. I smiled awkwardly, assuming she simply wanted reassurance. Instead, she started walking toward me. The room gradually fell silent as people realized she wasn't returning to her table. Every step felt deliberate, almost sacred. Guests instinctively moved aside. Even the musician seemed unsure whether to continue playing. I remained frozen. Emily stopped beside my chair. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were the kind that appear when someone finally lays down a burden they have carried for far too long. Without saying anything at first, she placed the bouquet gently on my table. Every person in the ballroom watched. There are moments when words become too small for what the heart has carried through years of silence. The room expected a proposal, a dramatic confession, or some carefully rehearsed surprise. What they witnessed instead was something infinitely more powerful. Emily spoke about friendship before love. She spoke about the people who stay when life becomes inconvenient. She spoke about hospital rooms, grief, broken dreams, lonely birthdays, impossible mornings, and ordinary afternoons that quietly save broken hearts. She reminded everyone that fairy tales often make us believe love begins with fireworks when, in reality, it usually begins with someone consistently showing up, year after year, without asking for applause. She admitted that after Ryan left, she spent months trying to understand why losing one relationship had felt like losing her future. Then she realized her future had never disappeared. The person who had stood beside her through every storm had been sitting quietly in the background all along, never demanding recognition, never asking for anything in return. As she spoke, I realized that almost every important memory in my adult life included her somewhere in the picture. The first apartment I celebrated. The first promotion I earned. The night I almost gave up after losing my father. The day she convinced my grieving mother to leave the house for the first time in months. Every Christmas dinner where we pretended not to notice people asking uncomfortable questions. Every birthday neither of us forgot. Every ordinary Tuesday that became meaningful simply because we shared it. The bouquet wasn't a symbol of marriage anymore. It had become a symbol of gratitude for every invisible act of love that had quietly shaped two ordinary lives. People around us wiped away tears. Even Olivia stood beside her new husband, crying through the happiest day of her life because she understood something extraordinary was unfolding. For years I believed protecting our friendship meant burying my feelings forever. I thought silence was the greatest gift I could offer. But silence sometimes protects fear more than it protects love. Emily reached for my hand. It felt strangely familiar, as though every year of friendship had been preparing us for that simple gesture. She didn't ask me to marry her. She didn't promise forever. She simply asked whether we could stop being afraid of discovering what our lives might become if we finally allowed our hearts to tell the same story our actions had been telling for years. The applause that followed wasn't loud because people enjoyed romantic surprises. It was loud because everyone recognized truth when they saw it. Life after that evening wasn't magically perfect. Real love never erases real problems. We still argued over small things. We still worried about careers, aging parents, financial responsibilities, and all the ordinary challenges that every couple eventually faces. But those struggles felt different because they belonged to two people walking in the same direction instead of two friends pretending destiny had no better plans for them. A year later we returned to that same ballroom for a charity event supporting families caring for loved ones with terminal illnesses. We donated in memory of my father and in honor of every caregiver who quietly sacrifices their own happiness for someone else's comfort. Standing there together, I realized that the greatest miracle wasn't finding love. The miracle was recognizing the love that had patiently waited through ordinary days, painful seasons, missed opportunities, and years of unnecessary fear. Sometimes destiny doesn't send strangers into our lives. Sometimes it gently reveals that the person we've been searching for has already been sitting beside us through every chapter. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like this video, share it with someone who still believes in true friendship, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so more people can discover stories that remind us hope is never truly lost. Special request: before this story ends, please comment with the words, "Kindness always finds its way," if you believe that genuine love begins with friendship and that second chances can change an entire life. Years have passed since that unforgettable wedding, and the bouquet itself has long since dried. Its flowers became fragile, their colors faded, and their fragrance disappeared. Yet it still rests inside a simple wooden box in our home because it reminds us that the most valuable moments are rarely planned. They arrive unexpectedly, disguised as ordinary traditions, quiet friendships, or impossible coincidences. Every time we look at those faded flowers, we remember that the greatest love stories are not always the loudest. They are built through countless unseen acts of loyalty, compassion, patience,